agenda. No way.
with the round table.
Even with Tom.
Inclusion
Are,
of
we're live now?
round table.
Oh, well, I mean, it is a workshop, so, I mean, okay. For anybody that is in the room watching the last 30 seconds, or watching live at home, or watching a tape of this, I hope the last 30 seconds showed that we try to have a little fun at the Webster Town Board, because, all things considered, Kyle, I think you would agree, we do a lot of serious stuff. So you gotta kind of cut the tension sometimes with a little joking. So, anyway, and John Cahill and I were accused this week of, you guys gotta grow up, and we're like, we're not gonna grow up. What would be the fun in that, right? Little late, right. Well, anyway, welcome to the Thursday, March 20th, Town of Webster Workshop. We have 3 presentations tonight, and we're gonna start off with Chris Bilo, our Parks and Recreation Commissioner, is going to present on, and I'll let you describe it, because the acronym PROSAR, I butcher it every time, but you have a presentation on the committee recommendations of restructuring. So Chris, I'll hand you the baton.
Thank you. So PROSAR. PROSAR is currently, as you are aware, the advisory board to the Parks and Rec Department. PROSAR stands for Parks, Recreation, Open Space, Athletic Review. So sort of a mouthful. And what I'm going to do tonight is kind of just go over a few things that I'm suggesting from a restructure standpoint. And I'll go through this as I go through the slides. Something that I've been debating and kind of going over for about the last year, as the information that's shared during these bi-monthly, every other month meeting has not been as useful and engaging as I think we probably need it to be in the department. And that's not to say that it's on the committee members' responsibility or even mine. It's sort of a shared responsibility over how this has morphed over the time. I'll start by kind of going over what I'm going to go over this evening, so the agenda topics. Give you a quick overview of what PROSAR is, sort of how it was started, and then the recommendation moving forward, how we take that PROSAR structure and, again, get the most out of the input from our residents that serve or participate on those committees. Those 3 being recreation programs, our parks, and then 55-plus programming or senior programming. Those are the 3 key areas, obviously, of our department. And then kind of going into a little bit of the creation and the structure of what those 3 components will look like. So to go backwards a little bit, PROSAR, originally when that was originally designed, the original intent, not as effective, and one of the reasons is a lot of the information that PROSAR initially kind of dealt with, we no longer deal with. And one of the examples that I put on there is field usage. There is a dedicated group that kind of goes over field usage, especially through Youth Sports Council. There's a lot of decisions that are made and discussed within that organization. And then obviously on our end, our field usage is really determined by availability. If we have it available and groups are able to utilize the field space that we have, we make that available. So that's just one side of it. Also, again, in regards to the athletic review portion of PROSAR, the field house. We've actually gotten to the point where a lot of our activities now, we hold those activities in-house. A good example is this year, we took the North Coast program, which used to be held at the field house at Thomas, moved that program back over to the rec center. So all of the games and activities actually took place under our roof. So we were able to do that. So again, not as much need for this group to kind of focus on that athletic review piece. Obviously, we're still looking for the community input, which is the intent of what PROSAR or an advisory board is. So we're not looking to go away from that intent, that portion of how PROSAR was structured. We're just looking for more specific feedback in those 3 core areas. So recommendation that I've shared with both the supervisor and then also our department liaison, Jennifer, is that what we'd like to do is have three of the three focus groups. Each one would be sort of chaired or led by department staff. Recreation program events, pretty self-explanatory. Focus on current and future programs, events offered through the department, providing suggestions and input on new programming. Be led by our recreation director, Katie Kovar. 55-plus programming, provide focused senior programming, provide opportunities for changing senior program needs. Obviously, that's a big one as we start to see sort of the needs and the interest of our 55-plus participants changing over time. And that would be, again, led by department staff, Daphne Gioka. And then parks and open space, provide a focus on current parks, properties, including the features and amenities within them, provide input on current town and land and future opportunities as arise. So again, to go back to the PROSAR structure, as open space or as land was being acquired, PROSAR would provide some input on potential use of those properties. That would stay the same. We would just have that information would be shared by the park side of these focus groups. And again, that would be head up by our Parks Director, Glenn Morrell. So those are the three groups that I'm suggesting we kind of go to. And now I'll get into real quickly the creation and the structure of what those three groups look like. So each group would ideally have 4 to 5 residents. Does not need to be a specific set amount, but for just what I'll say is good group dynamics as well as conversation. 4 to 5 residents participate quarterly meetings or as needed. So if something may come up, again, I'll go back to that park example. Piece of property comes up and town board wants to have some input from the park focus group. They may need to meet additionally on top of those 4 times a year. And then they'll meet to discuss obviously items that relate directly to their area. The rec side is we've had some discussions internally. We would focus those timeframes of those meetings would be around when the seasonal brochure is being prepared. So that way if there's programs that the community wants to see, that we can meet that need, we can include those in the seasonal brochures. So the town will accept any individual to a focus group at any time. So in other words, there's no term limit. I think one thing that's happened over time, and especially for the PROSAR group, since, again, it is an advisory group, it's not a decision-making board, is we were in a loop of, people coming on and serving their term and then looping off. I'm not sure there's really a reason why a resident, if they have an interest to stay on, I'll say the rec programming side, they could stay on it for 2, 3, 4, as long as they really want, and as long as they're providing input. I think that's the one caveat to it that we'll kind of make sure they adhere to is that, they're not just showing up for a meeting, but they're actually providing their input. And I think what we'll hopefully gain from this is that input. Because as we were having our PROSAR meetings, especially this past year, they were really becoming more information-based from me, where I was providing sort of a monthly report or a bi-monthly report on activities and things that were going on and then the next step. So I'm hopeful that, with a group of 4 to 5 people in a specific area that they have an interest in, that discussion or conversation will sort of be enhanced. Obviously, if we grow outside of 4 or 5 people, so if we put out the call for participants on these groups, and we end up with 7 or 8 people, that's fine. We can make that work. The more input that we receive, obviously, makes us better. So, there's no limit as to the number of people that we would want to have or have to have on this group. But again, just from a general consensus, 4 to 5 people is an ideal group size to have for us. I have shared this topic with our current PROSAR members. There's only 5 of them, so we only have 5 individuals who are members right now. We have 3 very active members who have been around for a few years, and those 3 individuals have reached back to me, and all 3 of them had shared an interest that they'd like to continue. And actually, all 3 of them shared a different focus area that they'd like to participate in. So it kind of goes to what I'm suggesting, that there's that interest already, maybe in specific areas. So each one of those members has already mentioned, you know, one would like to be in the rec side, one would like to be in the park side, and one would like to be in the 55 plus. So we already have what I'll say is sort of a start to that. So that is what I have for you. Questions? How are you doing time?
Looks like Kate Rose. You're doing a fantastic job. I couldn't be more proud of you.
Well, since Councilwoman Wright and myself kind of got an audition on this one from Chris, and we were like, yeah, it seems like a good idea. I guess, John and Jenny, this is your first time potentially seeing and hearing this idea?
I have no questions.
I mean, truthfully, ideally what'll happen is we have 3 committees, and if we could get, I'll say 5 people on each one, that's a board of 15 people, where currently we're drawing 4 or 5. So I'm thinking realistically, we'll actually end up with more participation by going with this. So I think we're gonna get more value out of the input.
The more
That's
input you
what
get
I
from,
think as well. I think it increases the community participation, and I know the community has been very interested in different things happening in the town. So this allows increased community participation, but it also allows them to go deeper into the areas that they're focused in, which, like you said, will make those conversations much more, they'd be more enriched.
I really think the one area that's gonna have the best benefit is gonna be the seniors or the 55 plus. It just provides an opportunity for people, if they do have that interest, it provides that specific forum for them.
Boy, am I glad you said that, because I want to come back to that in a second. We're going to get ahead of this schedule, John, but Jenny, do you have any questions or
No.
comments on this?
I think it's a good idea, and thank you so much for putting your, input into that, and have our community, interact with us. So this is very, very important. We
Yeah.
want to build a relationship.
the more community input that you have, the town benefits as a whole, in my opinion. So I think what you're doing is
Mhm.
great.
I agree.
So, I just have a couple, I guess, comments, pseudo questions, and we'll move on, but, Kyle, I don't expect you to give an answer on this today, but, it's an advisory board, it's not legislative. To me, that means we have a lot more latitude on what we can do with it. We couldn't come in and say, hey, let's change the planning board and do all this stuff. That's a little different. But on that same note, I wonder if we should, with Neen's help, research, like, did the town board ever do a resolution to either set up ProSAR and/or approve the bylaws? Because the current, it's a goofy, I call it setup right now with the 2-year terms, term limits, or 3-year, whatever it is, 9 members. It's very different from all of our other citizen boards. So I don't know the genesis of how it came to that,
Yeah.
but I wonder if, Kyle, if we researched and saw how it started, maybe we can just kind of continue on with that with some, like, board resolution in the future to, basically, not a lot of heavy lift, but change it to this. If we did something as a board 10, 20, 30 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd agree with that approach. I can work with Deneen on that.
Yeah, thank you. And then the last thing is that I have to chuckle when, the 55 plus. I'm not gonna ask people's age on this dais, but I do not envy Daphne and you, Chris, on that, because the interest of that population runs the gamut. And I don't know how, it's gotta be so challenging, because some of those people, I see them in the rec center, they just wanna lift weights and run marathons and do stuff that 20-year-olds wanna do. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I know from talking, doing Tuesday Talk with seniors, we gotta have more knitting classes, and we need to have more bingo, and those are valuable. But you're trying, I don't know, there's 8 or, oh my God, I know there's like 8,000 people over 70 in town. That's a challenge. I don't know how you do it.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think it's much different than what we already do across the board anyways. There are so many different needs and interest in everything else that goes into it. That just happens to be in one specific category. So as we've gone through programming assessments and needs and discussions, usually it's we try to select programs that we think are of an interest, and that's where this group will actually provide
Yeah.
more of that input. So as we provide the programs, the participants are the ones that decide if that's for them or not. Whether it's got a 55 plus at the beginning of it, or it's just an adult program, or it's
Right.
just a community event. So I don't think it's that much different than what we do with everything else. It's just specific to that one area. It's similar to fitness, you know, and trying to
Sure.
decide what fitness classes do you teach? Do you teach, is spin still in, or is spin not? Is it
Right.
Zumba, or is it,
Because, I mean, as the analogy I'll use, Kyle, this isn't like a deed-restricted community where you have to live there, you gotta be 55. If you have a knitting class, a
Absolutely.
27-year-old can go to that
Absolutely.
class.
Yep.
Right?
we have a 55 plus talk coming up here, I think later, I think it's next month. Dan Mason from the Red Wings is coming in. My guess is we're gonna have people that are coming to that talk that are not 55.
Sure. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
And we're 3 minutes ahead, Lori, how about that? Pretty efficient, huh? I just want to make sure Councilman Cahill knows there is no over-under on the workshop.
Nope.
So our second topic tonight is a presentation, and I think it's going to be done by Lori Fox from MRB Consultants, Engineers, but also with the help, I think, of our Patron, our Deputy DPW Commissioner, and Paul, maybe you are involved in this a little bit too. So I'm going to hand the baton off to that triumvirate.
Thank you. All right. Yes, we're back again to give you a little update about Vosburg Pump Station. We've talked about this several times, and the condition that it's in, and really the need to really get this upgraded. And we did we worked with MRB in the past to do an evaluation of it. We're just going to flip through some slides to refresh your memories. That is the station. And a little background. The station is almost 45 years old. In 21-22, we again completed a comprehensive evaluation. In June of 2024, we applied for a WIA grant. The grant was not received. Along with that, really to apply for the WIA grant, we had to do a bond resolution at $5.7 million, which is the engineer's estimate for 24-25, and we also completed a seeker, which was required for WIA. Winter of 2025, we started investigating other grant opportunities. And in March, we will be submitting for a congressionally directed spending fund. And that's what we're going to sort of talk about today. That's why Lori is here. So again, just some concerns. It is well beyond its useful life. Everything in there is just about original. Again, we have one pump that is unable to be serviced. It runs at I'm going to say a 30% capacity. If that, we cannot remove it because the valves do not work. We cannot isolate it. I think we all know that in the past during wet weather events, we've had the building fill up with sewage up to the doors. I know if Patty was here, she was there. She would definitely remember that. Again, leaking pipes, raw sewage on the floor. This is the wet well side. This is non-existent ventilation. This is where the hydrogen sulfides build up. The staff has to work in there, so it's not a great place. And those are the valves we're talking about that they don't move. So the components, that is the control system. Looks like it's out of a World War I submarine, and that little piece of paper right there, and we should zoom in on it next time, that says do not change the controls. We had to write that on there because if we do, we'll lose the station. So recommendations again, full rehab of the station, wet well structure, ventilation improvements, pumps, valves, piping, and a actual flow meter. The stations within this town are of age that we don't have flow meters in them. We don't know what's coming in, we don't know what's going out. So pretty important information, especially on this being our largest station that does pick up flow from Penfield as well. The Wegmans, the Bay Road, Empire over there, Walmart down into the Dugway. All of that pumps up through that station. Some of it goes to county, some of it comes to us. So pretty important station for the area. Again, antiquated controls. And I will touch on this one, the emergency power generator. So generators that are used in critical situations, and pump stations are categorized as critical. Hospitals, things like that, are changed out every 15 years. This is 45. So, and again, just more of the stuff that needs to be done. Again, our 2025 estimated cost is $5.7 million, and that was our submission that we bonded for WIA. So, I'm going to turn this over to Lori, and she's going to talk about the grant opportunities, which would help this project along immensely. So, turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so Paul Sheffield came to me because he's been working on this project for quite a long time. And he was just asking me for my recommendation, because that's what I do at MRB. I work on grants, I write them, I administer them and whatnot. So he was just asking me, you know, ideas, what can we do, how can we get this funded? We started talking about the project a little bit. And I went through, and for the town, I kind of made up a little funding scenario sheet, we call it. And we just looked at potential funding grants for water or sewer projects. And pretty much everything on here is a potential grant that you could potentially apply for. So once you start looking into these, then you have to start looking, well, are we eligible, are we competitive? So we went through the list, and I'll start actually kind of in the middle. One of the first things we do is we look at the town's MHI, because a lot of times there's an MHI, which is a median household income. A lot of times, depending on some grants, it depends on what your MHI is. So for a USDA grant, in order to be eligible for a grant, you have to be under like 56,000, and you guys are at 80. So right off the bat, USDA, we can't do. You could qualify for a loan, you know, long loan, but you have to pay it back. We're looking for grant funds. Same thing with community development block grant. Because of your MHI is so high, you're not eligible to apply for that. So then we started looking, you know, at the water quality improvement, and that goes along with the WIA grant. So the town applied for a WIA grant in 2024. What we're seeing with that grant in the last few years is pretty much 50% of your score is water quality. So there's no MHI requirements for the WQIP or for the WIA, but you have to show some kind of documented water quality issues. And even though this project does have water quality to it, according to the funding or the funding scenarios and the scoring of it, we don't qualify enough to get the points to make an application competitive, and that's what happened in 2024. It was a good application, it just didn't hit the priorities of New York State right now, which they're going for water quality, they're trying to get rid of emerging contaminants, they're working on, you know, PFAS and whatnot, trying to get that out of the water and out of the sewer and whatnot. So we didn't really qualify. You're eligible to apply, but you're not competitive. There's a new grant, Pro Housing Capital Improvement Grant. Again, you could apply for this, but if the project does not support new housing and actually new affordable housing, you're not going to be competitive with that either. So we were, you know, kind of throwing around different things, and so I kind of mentioned to Paul, well, you know, the congressionally directed spending are coming out very soon. I think that it's a good program. It's a little bit different. It's not your traditional program. It's a program that goes through the politicians, and so there's really no scoring, and it's just what is important to the politicians. So we've been just trying to, you know, with everything that we have here, with all the information that we have, I thought we could put in a really good application. You know, it's a kind of a regional project because you take some flow from Penfield and do some stuff with the county. It kind of hit a lot of the bullet points that I think we would need. And so because we wouldn't really qualify for any of the other programs, we thought, let's try to put in an application with the politicians. So on March 31st, the Senate portals are open now, so that's through Schumer and Gillibrand. Those are open now, so we'll be applying by March 31st. And then we're waiting to hear when the House portal, when Morelli's portal is gonna open. But the information that we're using for the Senate portals, we'll basically just take that and apply. And one of the biggest things is letters of support, and the town staff has just come all together, and we're trying to get as many letters as we can, because that's one of the most important things is, a good application, but then letters of support showing the community, showing the region, showing local politicians are all in favor of this project.
So who's working on getting letters, or we're not that far along in the process yet?
We are that far along, because time is of the essence. Created a sort of a target sheet, if you will. We've sent out 36 letters Tuesday. I've lost track of days. I've been a little bit crazy. We've got 9 back. We've got, I believe, 3 or 4 already committed. Today was day to follow up on those. So we do have, some very large Rochester organizations already submitted letters back.
Great.
So I'm glad John led with that question. I promise I did not ask him to ask that question. That's great. Because how many people are you assigned, Maria? 3. Art, you got all the commercial people in Penfield.
Yeah.
7 for me?
Honestly, I don't even know the number, but yeah, you got a handful too.
Bridget
Absolutely.
Harvey took all the politicians because she saw the 3 county legislatures, which are Dondorfer, Johns, and Charty, have the same chief of staff, and Bridget knows that chief of staff, went to them, and they're all in.
Correct.
Because we have to apply for this by March 31st, and we really just had our first meeting on this on March 11th. We have 20 days to have MRB write a grant package that has a chance to win $4 million. And Lori and Paul were very upfront on this based on their experience of having had previous clients that went for this and you navigating them.
Yep.
That the letter of support thing is uber important.
Yes.
So we, it was 36, 37, and we've assigned them, and we've got to follow up, and it's going okay.
Well, I'm glad that you follow up before we do any projects in our town. We wanted to apply for grants first, and that would be wonderful. I know that with the grants, you gotta be specific, how to apply them. And I do have a couple of names and connections, if you do need them, and to see if I can try to help, expedite it, and hopefully we can get that, secure for us. And also too, may I please ask a question? We've been talking about this pump station for a while, this before I got elected. Is this now the final stage? So are there any additional or anything else that we're gonna be doing this with this amount that we're applying for?
Is this I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Is this the final
it's
stage
like
of the pump station?
Of the pump station, this is it, right? This is where we're gonna be managing and have tried to, taking care of it and, make it efficient because of
That is the intent, absolutely. The entire station is 45 years old. The entire station needs to be rehabbed.
Yes.
It'll include some of the force main, some of the manholes up the road, the air relief valves. That is the intent as we go into these pump station projects, and really a lot of the larger ones, it's to encompass everything. So it's set for 20, 30 years. Yeah, I can't imagine myself coming back here, and if we did this today, coming back here next year and saying, hey, we need to do this on it. So the intent is it's all encompassing, it's all the same age, it's all obsolete. That is the intent.
So Art, to that point, Art, I know that took a tour of the pump station. I think it was last year or the year before. And the conditions in there are what we're seeing on the photos of your presentation. So my question with respect to this congressionally directed spending is, when would that decision be made? Because we're at the point, in my opinion, and I'm sure you're gonna agree, we need to move now. Because if there's a catastrophic failure in that pump station, and the conditions are there for that to happen, in my opinion, when do you think a decision will be made with respect to this?
So that's a great point. I'm gonna jump back to Jenny
Okay.
first, though. So we have looked, this, Paul Chatfield and I have looked at this PR, if you will. Is there a place to cut out of it, right? Because obviously, you know, it's expensive. And we looked at it, and I'm gonna tell you, you know, can we cut 20,000 here and 40,000 there? And is everything right? It's a game of Tetris. And can we cut $100,000? We probably could, but that's $100,000 that I'm gonna come back next year and say I need $150,000 for. So we did look at that. John, you're absolutely right, and this is ripe for a failure. We have, last year again, we've had to have parts machined for those pumps.
Right.
Yeah, it's failed, portions of it's failed, and it'll just continue to fail. So as far as the CDS, I'm gonna let Lori talk about that.
Yeah, so it could take a while before we know, but initially we'll know, probably by May. We'll submit this in March, I believe, and the final guidance hasn't come out, and the final timeline for the politicians hasn't come out. So what happens is we submit our application to the politicians. They go through everything, and they pick the projects that they want to put through. Once they pick those, I think last year it was May, I'm not sure what the timeline is this year. They have to post the projects that they're choosing to put through for potential funding by May, then they'll notify the town if it's chosen by either Schumer, Gillibrand, or Morelli. And it could be chosen by all three, or it could be chosen by none. We don't know, but the fact that we're getting all these letters of support and everything, I'm hoping that's gonna knock us up to the top of the pile, and so that we make it through. So if we make it through that first round of funding, that doesn't mean you're gonna get awarded, that just means we've made it through. And then what happens is it has to go through a bunch of other approvals, and whatnot. So hopefully by May, we would know if we've made it on anybody's list. If we haven't, then, well, we're done at that point. If we have, then it's just a waiting game of trying to find out. And then if they pass the federal budget in October like they're supposed to, when the federal year starts, we could potentially know if it's made it through all those rounds. And usually if you make it through each, there's like certain things, like the Senate has to vote on it, the House has to vote on it, then other people have to vote on it. And it does take a while, but I think we were talking, we're gonna put the money for construction, so you could start design now, without having any impact on the funding. So you could start some design now if you wanted to, but again, we may not know for a year if you're actually getting the funding, if we make it through that first round.
So here's my next question, and when it comes to the political aspect of it, this could drag on and on and on, and we do not have that time. Would you agree with that, Art?
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that too.
So
That's
would it
kinda
be,
scary.
would it be in the best interest of the town to start the design process now? Because we've already voted on, the bond, I believe, right? We go ahead with the design. We're waiting, and we're waiting. Make it past the first phase, the second phase, the third phase, and now we're a year out. At what point do we say, we can't wait any longer, we need to start construction? Because I think we were there a couple of years ago.
We were there before I started in this seat, yes.
We're lucky nothing's happened thus
Well,
far. Like,
it-
nothing,
It has,
it has, but
Yeah,
nothing
but
that has
nothing
been
major.
super
Nothing.
Right, but-
catastrophic.
catastrophic.
So my question is, from a timeline standpoint, we know that's gonna take a long time. Have you set a hard date as to, we're not gonna wait any longer, we're gonna move ahead with the improvements?
I don't think, in all due respect, I don't think I can do that. I think my role as a department head, and I share the information. I would absolutely agree with you. I would encourage that we move forward with a design. The design will take 3 to 7 months.
Right.
So, you know, there's a big chunk of time. Do I think technology will change in 18 months? Hopefully we get a grant. I don't think it'll change tremendously. You know, we might change a pump here or there or something like that, but absolutely, to spend that 3 to 7 months to get this designed, this is not a quick station to design, a lot of flow. There's a lot of controls in it. So, yeah, I would encourage us to move forward with design.
I would say, I would totally agree with you that we need to be proactive with respect to the design initiation process, rather than being reactive, because we have a catastrophic failure, we're in big trouble.
So I think,
I have a different question, if I may.
you go for it.
How much money is available for all of the applications? And like, this is a pump station, so I don't know that that's very sexy or very exciting. So where does a pump station rank in that weighting? Like, I don't know what kind of impact that will have as well.
Yeah, well, again, a lot of what we have in the application is about if it had a catastrophic failure and what that's gonna mean, the fact that it's a regional project. Water and sewer projects with the politicians have been very popular. That's pretty much everything that we've gotten funded. Just the fact that we're getting so many letters of support, I'm hoping that'll just shoot us right up to the top of the pile. You know, again, it's how we present the information in there too, and we're talking about just, you know, the regional impact, failure, just the amount of development going on in the town and everything going on. I think, you know, if that goes, you guys are in trouble, so.
How much money is there to be doled out? Is
There's-
there an
I
amount?
don't
Is there a
know.
cap?
They don't really tell you that. So the House representatives can put through 15 projects. So they go through and they pick the top 15. The senators can put through as many as they want. So I don't know that there's really any cap or what. I'm not sure how all that works because there's different categories too. So you have to put a project in and it has to fit in within one of the federal categories. So water and sewer definitely is very popular. There's other categories, so I think it depends on, I don't know that there's one answer. It's not like with the WQIP, we know they have 25 million and that's what it's gonna be. This is kind of, who knows? You know,
Okay.
they don't really tell you that information.
Do you
I
know what the
agree with
cost
John
estimate-
that we need to move forward with the design phase, because this is just it's a ticking time bomb that has extraordinary repercussions if something happens.
Do you know what the estimated cost of the design is?
I
don't
don't
recall.
have it in front of me. I think it was just short of 400,000.
Okay, thanks.
Um,
So, Paul, to your,
keep going.
my next question is, I just answered my own question, never mind.
I would.
We're good.
And getting back to Ginny, and if Ginny, if you could tonight or first thing tomorrow morning, please send me any information you have.
Because I know, like,
Okay.
because a couple of weeks ago, I know as a liaison for the clerk too, we just been awarded for $44,191 grant for our machine. And like I said, you know, I know that Maria and everything that have been, you know, doing it, but we have some hiccup. But thank God I got invited to, you know, the governor budget meeting. And I, you know, was lucky to have spoken with a couple of their staffer. I explained our situation and they looked into it and we got the grant, you know, I mean, a week after. So maybe it's timing or whatever. If
Absolutely.
anything that we can do or I can help, you know, with my connection and whatever, I would love to do.
That'd be
Because
great.
that's what it is about. We building relationship and we building connection and that's what.
That would be
you know.
great.
So can I'm getting, I think, that Councilwoman Wright says we should move forward with getting a resolution in the next board meeting on authorizing design. I think that's what you're saying too, John.
Correct.
Ginny, would you say, are you giving me the instructions as supervisor to set up with them for April 3rd's board meeting to have a resolution for design?
Like I said, you know, we've been talking about this for years, right? And this is very important, and we don't want any, you know, emergency or something like that, it's gonna cost the town more. So I think it's fine. You know,
Okay.
I would, you know, accept to that.
Then I will work with Kyle and Art and Paul and Lori and Paul Chatfield of, you know, how that resolution is structured to start, it's really the start of the process. And that's what we will do on April 3rd. And I think that's a wise move.
I think so I'll ask the question. Is this something we can include in our application, and does it garner us any points?
That you're starting design.
Design.
Absolutely, we can put that in there. We won't be able to ask for funding for it because you can't
Right.
start anything before you're awarded the
Sure.
thing, but we can show project readiness, we're ready to go, this is an important thing, so yeah, we can absolutely.
Okay, yeah, and I think as we all know, you know, from the, you know, all the other grants we've applied for, right, that they're further along, you know, we are, I think it benefits us. How much we'll find out, but
But we still continue to apply for the grants,
Yes.
right? to
Yes.
go-
Yes.
okay.
absolutely.
So I'm gonna ask this question out of ignorance because I have no idea about the grant process and what you provide. But I think some of these pictures would be very beneficial as to show the current condition of this
Oh,
pump
yeah, actually,
station
there-
and the
yeah,
need.
we're gonna attach this with the application, with the letters
Great.
of support. Normally, we would attach, the engineer report, but it's like that thick, and I know the politicians aren't gonna read it and aren't even gonna understand it, so we won't include that. But yeah, if there's any other documentation or anything that you have that you want us to include, we can
Yeah.
include all that. You know.
Yeah,
there-
definitely include the pictures, for
Yeah,
sure.
oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah, and if you, yeah, and I think we had that other presentation, Paul's other one.
That's correct, yeah,
that-
we have a whole bunch of pictures.
Great.
Yeah.
And also, you have to be specific too, like the one that we have for the clerk, it's for be educational. That's what we, you know, that's what they told us, and that's where they went to that portal, and they're able to give grant, you know, give us the grant.
Yeah.
So,
Art, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, gang. That's fantastic. And
Thank you very
we've got
much.
some work to do in the next 2 weeks leading up to April 3rd. And we'll do it. All right, well, our last item tonight, and certainly not the least, I can't thank Leanne Kimber enough for leaving her family tonight to come in on short notice, and it was short notice. If you'd like to sit, or if you'd like to, how do we do that, Maria? Yeah. This item is the follow-up to the March 6th, 2 weeks ago, presentation that Leanne Kimber, who is from Colliers, but I say is the acting executive director of Webster Economic Development Alliance, WEDA. She was here with actually Kimberly Batiste 2 weeks ago. And we described to the board the kind of out of left field reach out that we got from Empire State Development, from ESD. You know, usually we apply for grants. This is unusual that a government agency like that reaches out and says, we'd like to structure this Fast New York grant for you. It's a little different. So I'm going to hand the baton off to Leanne, who, you know, you think, Leanne, it's been a busy 2 weeks?
I would say so. A lot of drives to Webster the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks. Okay, well, thank you all for having me here tonight. Again, Leanne Kimber, Colliers Engineering and Design, Acting Director of the Webster Economic Development Alliance. 2 weeks ago, I came here and presented to you the map that you see on the screen, diagram of the roadways that were to be included in this Fast New York Track C infrastructure grant. Phillips Road Multimodal Trail, Orchard and Panama improvements, extension of Chiota Drive, reconstruction of Mitchell Dean Drive, and extension of Boulder Industrial Parkway. The grant was going to include all of those roadway improvements as well as the sanitary sewer upgrades that are currently in progress by the town. I'm going to scroll to the next slide. When we met last, I don't think, based on feedback we heard, we didn't hear any strong concerns from the board, but interest to hear what was going to come of the next 2 weeks. Specifically, I think our big action item was knowing that we were going to hopefully vote on a resolution tonight, that we would meet with the village and the town to discuss and prepare a list of bullet points that would serve as the content of that resolution and would be a precursor to a development agreement between WIDA and the town and WIDA and the village. So we did that. We prepared those bullets. We shared them with ESD, Empire State Development, for their feedback. They gave us some great feedback, great direction, and that's all reflected in the draft resolution you all have with you tonight. The one thing that was new information to us in that feedback was that ESD requested that we add to this project a electrical engineering master planning study to basically study how and what infrastructure upgrades would be needed to the Xerox site and thereabouts in order to attract strategic industrial investment. So that was new information to us. We kind of went into this initially on March 4th when we had our first meeting, thinking this was a roadway project for roads that town, village, WIDA, the state, all are in agreement that need to be improved in order to spur economic development in this area. So this electrical engineering study was sort of a different ball of wax. So this is the updated budget that reflects that. There's a couple of other changes that are also reflected here, and my alignment got messed up, I think, when this moved to PDF, but you get the idea. So one change starting from the top, sanitary sewer project by the town, we've learned that that has gone from $6.3 million to $7 million. Again, that's money that's already been spent, money that we know is going to be reimbursed, but wanted to reflect that here as part of this total investment in the site. The next line item is that electrical infrastructure planning project or study in the amount of $500,000. And then this is sort of a clerical difference, not a difference in substance, but in the previous meeting we did not have the HUD grant that the village has been awarded reflected in this table. So we've now added that in as that additional $500,000 at the end. So that brings the total project cost up to $17.3 million. The only change to the actual grant request is that it went from $9.3 million to $9.8 million to reflect the electrical engineering study. So I want to sort of restate that this was something that ESD has requested that we add, recognizing that, as Supervisor Flaherty puts it, we know we need the roads are the skeleton to this site. Even though this electrical engineering study is new information to us, we know that that is a study that needs to take place. Again, we know the site needs power. We know we need to figure out how it's going to happen, and it needs to happen comprehensively. Not that we have a crystal ball, but our thinking is that, it's logical that this is looped into the same project where these transportation improvements are happening. Keep this momentum going. Sees an opportunity to continue planning for this site and move it one step closer to that finish line of opening doors for new investment. So that's all kind of been litigated over and over again. Town, village, WIDA, the state have all agreed that that's something that they are interested in doing and something that they all want to see happen. So philosophically, it doesn't change anything. Financially, it changes things a little bit. So what does this mean? I'm going to just scroll down to the things that we do know. So just kind of summarizing what I've gone over so far. This electrical engineering study is going to involve some planning activities to bring sufficient power to support industrial development on this campus of about 200 acres, 1 million square feet existing, but that will probably increase with additional development. Some of the activities that would be included: electrical engineering, capacity studies, easements, legal work, infrastructure design. Basically, what do we need here? How would we bring it here? What would it cost? When would we do it? As I said, the cost would be about $500,000. The difference between this $500,000 and the 9.3 million that you would be applying for the roadway projects is that it's not something that can be financed with like construction financing the way you would typically do that. This is money that would have to be, I'll call it sponsored upfront by the town and village. Doesn't mean that it's not reimbursable. It would be reimbursable. It is part of the grant, but it would need to be put up front out of pocket before being reimbursed. So it's a little bit different in kind, not a significant difference in impact, but that's something to be aware of, that the way that the money would come back to you is a little bit different. We discussed this with both the town and the village. They're both on, or, you know, leadership at the town and village, both on board with doing this and with dividing that cost between the town and village. Exactly how that's divided, we're not sure yet, but we know that they would plan to divide it. 1% commitment fee that we talked about last time was going to be 1% of 9.3, now it would be 1% of 9.8, so that's a difference of about $5,000 that would be divided in some way between the town and village. So the commitment fee is a very minor increase, and then there's the financing piece. So things that we don't know the exact scope of this study. Once the grant's awarded, that's something that would be worked out with the town and the village at the table, but including NYSEG, NYISO, and ESD to figure out exactly what needs to be included, who needs to be at the table, and how it would actually be carried out. We don't know yet whether it would be the town or the village that would actually procure that work. So one entity would have to procure it and do that study. And we don't exactly know how the money would be split yet. That's something that I think the town and the village would work out. We've discussed splitting it 50-50. We've discussed splitting it in some pro rata fashion, depending on, you know, the impact or the potential benefit to each jurisdiction or municipality. So same as before, there's things we know, things we don't know. We don't expect that we'll know the answers to these questions in time for voting on this resolution or submitting the application, but they're things that we would work out following April 1st. So, just see if there's anything else I want to add here. I think that pretty much covers it. So, slight increase in the grant, very slight increase in the commitment fee. I know that can potentially be a financial concern. Philosophically, there are things that could be a concern to this board that we've talked about. One could be, you know, we don't want to set a precedent that the town and village are willing to pay money for private property owners to do planning studies that are going to benefit their, you know, private holdings. That's something we certainly recognize. That's not what's happening here. The money is, you know, coming from the state, being passed through the town and village. And we've talked about, you know, does that set a precedent for the town and village looking to, you know, in the future, people are going to come to you and ask you to do the same kind of thing. We see this as sort of a very unique situation where, you know, the state is coming to us with a grant opportunity. And if this is something that they see as necessary and something that we all also know is necessary in order to make this site ready for investment, this seems like a good opportunity to take advantage of. The second concern, are we paying money out of pocket? The answer is no, not really. So yes, upfront, the money would have to come from the town and village, but again, it's coming from the grant and it would be reimbursed. So that's everything I prepared for tonight. If there are questions, we can discuss those now. Yeah, go ahead.
I definitely have a question.
Go ahead.
Because I'm pretty sure that as a municipality, we cannot do, like, I can't go and have the town or the village go pave my driveway. Just can't do it. But essentially, that's what we're doing here. And I know it's encouraged by the state, and I understand that. But my question would be to you, Kyle, is this something, obviously we'd be setting a precedent, but would it be legal for us to do work on a private road prior to that being turned over to the village and/or town roads.
If I remember correctly, they were going to begin the dedication process
Yeah.
immediately, correct? So that
So
the,
the-
So the dedication process would
The-
take place
yeah.
before any improvements are done.
Correct.
Correct.
The tri-party
Okay.
agreement stipulates all of that,
That
that
was my
dedication
concern.
would happen first, yeah.
correct.
So the only other concern, and I guess this will be worked out between the town and the village with respect to the split. But that'll be discussed later.
Yeah, and I think we've had some good conversations up to this point, and I think we'll work that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank
Jenny?
you.
Is there a timeline for this project that to be going right? Is that we have to, apply the grant at a certain time for this project?
This grant is done on a rolling basis. We've received every indication from ESD that we need to move very quickly, that we should apply by April 1st.
Okay, so it's a deadline. No, I was just seeing that, with everything that we have going on in our town at the moment, if we can just hold off or, and then see what, the grant and stuff like that, but apparently it's not gonna be that case, so therefore,
Can I just?
we gotta, yes.
Jenny, we didn't ask for this money.
I know.
They came to us,
But-
so.
But
This is
sometime
so
too,
critically important for the town of Webster, that property and the risk that Xerox brings, given how quickly that business is declining and how much they contribute to our tax base, it is imperative that we work collaboratively with the village and with the state. We have this
So-
opportunity with this grant. When those roads get dedicated, then that property can be subdivided, and that brings in that opportunity to have new businesses come to Webster.
Here's my-
well, I know that there's like other grants out there too, they encourage for the state, at the meetings that I've been to and stuff. They want us to revitalize, our community, so maybe this is one of the reasons why they want to do this. To try to approach to us.
I think
because
you're
they
exactly
saw
right,
the-
yes.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think the state sees this as a very critical site to economic development goals of the state. And then to the point of this grant versus other grants, I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't think you'll see an opportunity like this come back again.
So here-
Anything of this scale or magnitude.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, okay? I understand the state came to us and asked us to do that, so in all reality, the grant will probably be, hopefully we'll receive the grant money. The skeptic in me worries that these the dedication of these roads will go prior to, correct?
Correct.
Construction.
Mhm.
So then, the town or the village will have to be responsible for repairing those roads, regardless of us receiving the grant or not. So, that's just a concern, I just want to get on the record expressing that concern.
So concerned that if the roadways are dedicated prior to receiving the grant and maybe we don't receive the grant?
Correct.
Okay. I think it's a valid concern. The reason I would push back on it a little bit is only that, one, this resolution says that this is gonna be subject to the terms of the Xerox agreement. Two, I believe, I don't remember it exactly, but I believe the agreement stipulates that funding has to be in place in order for these dominoes to fall. And
Great.
so if we didn't get the grant, I don't think there would be pressure from Xerox to start that dedication process.
Leanne, can I address that, because it is happening fast, my head's spinning on this. John, you bring up a great point, and you can take the mayor out of the village, or whatever, you can take John out of the mayor thing, but you can't take the mayor out of John. That concern is the villages. We're not taking any dedication of roads in this, we're building an extension of Bolter Parkway and an extension of Chiota. There's no roads there. We wouldn't even consider starting that until the grant is awarded and we knew all the development agreements and all that stuff. Now, if the village, I'm sure the village is watching this as a prelude to, their meeting next week, and I say this, that that question and concern is more for the village because they're taking existing roads, Mitchell Dean,
Right.
Panama Orchard. And to your point, if all of a sudden the government, EST reneged, and all of a sudden it's like, too bad, you guys now have dedication of the road. Webster Village is part of our community, that would be terrible.
Who lives in the village on this board?
I think you might.
Oh, that's
Anyway,
great.
Well, I would say that when it comes to the dedication of the road, there'd be an offer for dedication. There has to be a formal acceptance by the municipality, so
Yeah.
they could hold off on acceptance, taking actual dedication formally until
Yeah.
the grant is approved.
And along those lines, I gotta tell you, and Paul is probably the person here that had the most experience on this back in April, May of last year. And I think that's, what I'm about to explain is gonna happen exactly once we get awarded this 9.8 million. And the analogy is, when we got awarded $20 million from ESD last year for the sewer plant in April, we had a meeting with them a week later. There was 9 people from ESD in a conference room, and it became very apparent that they were kind of making up the rules on this thing as they went along. And it was a negotiation, and a negotiation that was very favorable to us. So favorable to us that we got all $20 million by Thanksgiving. I envision that once they award this, that we will enter into those same type of details. Some of it'll be how the development agreement will look and all that stuff. But others will be like, hey, this impressed account that you're reimbursing us. Like, I'd rather not go into debt for some of this work. I'd rather us take it out of our fund balance if we know that a month later we're gonna get it right back. Why would we, you know what I mean? So those are the devil in the details, and I already have a list of a lot of things that, going into them today, I went into a couple, it would be serving a wine before it's time. But these are things that when we get awarded, we will negotiate with them and really, for lack of better terms. Because they've almost agreed in our conversations with ESD. Well, I think you can, they're making it up as they go along, because all of a sudden we asked them clarification questions. They're like, oh, yeah, oh, and we're throwing 500 grand more in. That's odd. That's odd, to say the least, right, John?
That's
I
good
mean,
odd.
So the other thing I would say on that is that the 500 grand, I think I let the board know that I attended a meeting with like 15 people in January, 2 months ago, at Xerox, Building 208, bunch of muckety-mucks from RG&E, Xerox, the village, the town. We walked out of that meeting and I was like, wow, RG&E committed. We're gonna do a 3-month study, and we're gonna report back to all of you in 3 months, A, how long it's gonna take to bring 50 meg of power to this campus, and B, how much that's going to cost. I was like, well, that's a milestone event. I can't wait for 3 months. I had in my day planner, oh, I can't wait till the middle of April. And then one of the higher ups at RG&E who was at that meeting sends us an email to everybody in attendance at that email a month later in mid-February. It says, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. And references NISO and that these studies cost $150,000 to $250,000. Precedent-wise, they bring 10 meg. I took that person's email, that part, and I cobbled it out, and it was exactly what my Supervisor's Corner article was last week. As Leanne, you described, I call the roads the skeleton, I call the power the organs. And in that part of the organs, I said, this is what RG&E has told us. And I sent that article to the RG&E people. I didn't want them to get shocked. I said, this is going in the paper tomorrow. I mean, you said it to us. I mean, it's a fact. And then 2 days later, ESD says we're going to put 500 grand into this thing. Okay, coincidence, maybe. Whatever. Now, last 2 things I would say on this. I've been really happy that this is the second situation in the last 12 months that the Village of Webster leadership and the Town of Webster leadership have coalesced and been on the same page and aligned. We did that for 4 months back in December of 23 through April of 24. We were a united front as we negotiated that three-party road agreement with Xerox. Now, I never liked that agreement because I thought that we were the ugly red-headed stepchild, that it was a sequential thing that would take literally 5 years before we were going to get the land for Bolter Parkway, because sequentially, Panama, Orchard funding, this and that. Now, I remember saying to the village, I said, you know what, you're not getting a gift here. This is a liability. You're getting no gift getting these roads. You got to maintain these, so you should ask for everything in the kitchen sink, and I'll support you on that. And so we talked, and they said, well, we'd like that 6 acres that's south of it. And I said, well, throw it in there. I'll support that. And they did. And Xerox didn't like it. But when the negotiation was over, they got the six acres in that agreement. So that was a good thing for the village and town to have that kind of alignment. Kyle, Leanne, Paul, you've been at these meetings. I think there is a similar team, like we're all for one, one for all. And I think it's good and healthy for, as well, I'm out of here in 9 months, but I'd like to think whoever the next supervisor is and whatever, that good karma can continue on. Because it makes, you know, John, you were the mayor. When the village and the town leadership is working, you know, peas and carrots, it's good for the community.
Oh, it is.
And last but not least, because I don't want to drag this on into the night, we talked about this morning. Leanne touched on it a little. We're a pass-through agent, so I have no problems with that. We're paying potentially $2,500 for that additional $500,000 to help with getting the momentum going of the organs of that campus, the power. This is just my opinion, and it probably will be some other board in years to come and some other supervisor, but there is not a shot in hell that I would ever advocate that the town government invest money on that campus to bring power to what is going to be to private industry. And as you said, John, it's somewhat illegal, but they've figured out a way to do it, right, through this WIDA pass-through local development corporation. I don't mind the pass-through when it doesn't really cost as much, because obviously if that campus gets rebuilt, I can tell you that that will be a boom for the community's taxpayers. There's just no doubt about that, all right? Jennifer, you know that better than anybody because you worked at Xerox, right? I mean, it's going to be a boom financially. It's going to be a boom morale-wise. But I, you know, like you said, John, I'm going to go on record and say this, and I think you're right to say we shouldn't be, you know, we can't spend money on that. Well, as Kyle said, well, they'll have the roads in their possession before the money goes out. You know, I can't even imagine how much money is going to have to be spent to bring the amount of power to that campus to take 80-acre parcels and 100-acre parcels to power. I know that ESD awarded $20 million to RG&E to bring the power needed to Fairlife to that 100-acre campus. And that power is 20 meg. They're bringing 20 meg to that campus to power that plant. Okay, I don't know what industries are going to come to the Xerox campus and what type of power needs they will need. But 2 months ago, we were talking about bringing 50 meg additional power to a campus that already has around 20. So RG&E and Xerox, they came up with that number 50. I didn't come up with it, so they must have an idea that industry in the 21st century that would be attracted to those 80-acre parcels, if 3 or 4 of them get sold, they're going to need that kind of power. I can't even imagine how much that's going to cost. It costs $20 million to bring 20 meg. So, but I do know this. That ain't our bill.
No, it's not. And we'll find out what's required, but not a dollar of taxpayer money locally I will ever advocate for.
You and I we're pinky swears on that one.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it would be legal, but it certainly makes 0 sense.
No.
So, any other questions or comments on this before we can start a regular town board meeting late, we just can't start it early, so.
Thank you very much for coming in and giving us the update tonight. I
you.
appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
So that ends our workshop at 7:41. I think we take a 5-minute break, and we will come back for the people in the room and people watching at home.